The following podcast contains explicit language. That means Diana and I like to cuss. We get a little excited. And there's spoilers. Hello and welcome back to Aim for the Head podcast. I'm Julie.
And I'm Diana.
And we are talking about Fear the Walking Dead Season 2, Episode 6. And I'm totally going to butcher this name, people. Sicut, Cervus.
She did it! Earlier today, she's like, I'm not going to roll that R.
So, Diana, first impressions.
Wow. Great episode. Just
It's an interesting one.
Yeah, lots of interesting. Like there were little pockets of action, but there was a lot more. I'd say there's a lot more character stuff in this episode than probably most of the ones.
Not
we've
just
had so
that,
far.
but I think there's more like menacing things going on, right?
Yeah.
So our group is learning not to trust people so much faster, I think, than our Walking Dead group did, right?
Right.
Because I think they didn't really encounter people right away all that much.
Right.
And I feel like that's all these people have been doing is encountering more people than the dead.
Right. And how many people are on the ocean? I mean, come on.
More than I guess we would have assumed.
Okay, all right.
But no, yeah, I enjoyed the episode too. I thought it was really intense in a couple of moments where I was like holding my breath.
Right.
But otherwise, all around, really good episode.
Yeah, I agree. It's exactly the same. Just, a couple of action-packed moments, and then, like I said, lots of character development, but again, creepy character development, like unsettling. There's a lot of unsettling moments. Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah, totally. So we're gonna jump right into. We're gonna do a quick play-by-play scene breakdown.
We're gonna change our format a little bit here.
Yeah, we're gonna just mostly do like a quick like shot by shot. Not a lot of detail. Just go through almost like a cliff notes.
Yes.
and then we're gonna we handpicked a few scenes. We're gonna drill into those and discuss those. Be a little bit more off the cuff on that.
So if we leave anything out that you thought was really interesting, be sure to send us a message. We're not trying to leave anything out. There's just so much that as the series continues on, there's just more and more things to talk about. So we're really trying to focus on the things that either we think are more heavy on the show or
drove the story forward
or that we found really interesting.
Yeah.
And warning, Diana and I are still hanging on to our colds a little bit. I got her sick. I'm feeling better, but she's still a little coffee. Forgive her.
All right. Anyway, so for this episode, we open up it's a church in a Spanish village. It's not clear. There's a pastor there who's giving a sermon. Main item of the sermon is that he's really talking about how God, his God would never do this, and he's imploring his subjects to not give up their faith. So they take communion and go through, and there's some music in the background. There's a hymn going on, and they leave the church, and
they start to bear arms.
Yeah, they, it's funny how he's saying, have faith, etc. And it's like, you have faith, and then they go outside and they're like, you grab a rake, do what you can. So right after they come out, Thomas Abigail comes up and in his truck, and he's trying to get them to come away with him.
Yeah, trying to stop them.
And all of a sudden, the people, they start bleeding out of their eyes, which, oh my God, that was so creepy.
Yeah.
And then that's, bam, smash cut. That's the end of that scene. And then from there, we jump to, we're aboard the Abigail. They're getting prepped for meeting with these Border Patrol guys. There's a little bit of a snafu because it's not working out the way that Lewis had planned it. So they are coming towards the boat when they were supposed to go toward the Border Patrol guys. They were not supposed to come forward.
Right.
And they look through the binoculars. There are two guys. Lewis only recognizes one. So it seems like there's a little bit of snafu going on. They immediately jump into gear, and they tell Strand tells Maddie to get everybody gone. She grabs everybody, brings them down to the engine room, and they are hanging out there. Daniel's listening in a little bit, gets a little tight there where the guy, one of the Border Patrol guys, is like, I want to check and make sure there's no more dead. And the one that really got me like, was when he was like, this is a big boat for just two people. So they're just sort of standing there, and the scene, you never see what's happening out on the boat. You just see it you hear everything
right.
From the perspective of everybody in the engine room. And, they're just all sort of looking at each other, and all of a sudden, shots fired. Well, there was a little bit of an argument going on that
their voices got
a little louder, and then there's shots fired.
Yep.
They come rushing out a minute or so later. The border guys are gone, and we know this because Daniel starts, giving them some headshots with his knife, and he goes to do that to Lewis, who appears to be dead, but he sort of revives, and he asks to not be stabbed in the head.
Mm-hmm.
He pleads, basically, so he doesn't get the headshot.
Mm-hmm.
Then the group, they come to the shore. They find those people that came out of the church. So now they know that, I guess we knew that they were they were in Mexico because of Abigail.
Right.
My bad. So the group comes to the shore. They find that group of church people. Some of them are dead, and they're sort of standing around trying to figure it out when a group of walkers comes around the corner. It's the rest of the church group that are...
mostly the choir.
Yeah. Choir boys.
Oh, and I want to say Julie asks for more zombie children, and Julie gets more zombie children.
And how creepy looking did it look when they were, we'll get into it a little more later, but it's like the zombie, the pose of the zombie is the typical arms out walking forward. But to do that where you've got like the whole like choir boy outfit on, so it's like all billowy, and you're like, and you've got like these white, like, it's bizarre. Anyway, so the group sort of snaps into action. They've got some walkers to take care of. They all they toss weapons about. They grab all of those sticks and rakes and stuff that these guys must have dropped right after their eyes started bleeding, and they all spring into action. They're doing a great job. 2 moments of actually there were 3 moments of hesitation. There was and it was all... No, they weren't all around kids, but 2 of them were. Nick hesitated with a little girl, but eventually followed through.
Yep.
Then Daniel hesitated with a little boy, and
Ophelia
he had a flashback, which we'll get into a little bit later, and he just couldn't do it, and Ophelia finished the job for him. And then Chris sees Maddie is down on the ground, and she's got a walker on top of her and is struggling, and he sees it happening, and he hesitates.
Yep.
And Alicia notices that, yells at him.
And she jumps in.
Yeah, they jump in. The situation resolves itself, to be discussed more later, I'm sure. So Thomas Abigail's truck is still there, but he's nowhere to be found. So that Strand gathers everybody, they get in that truck, and then they head out. They eventually come to what we can only assume is the Rosarita that he was discussing. It's a large, it looks like
it's like a vineyard farm thing. Yeah. Ranch.
Yeah, a ranch.
Call it a ranch.
That was the word I was looking for. But it's very compound-like, because it's got a wall all the way around. It's got a nice gate at the front to let people in.
They open the gate, you see workers.
Yeah, exactly. There's workers. There's, it's full on. They've got like crops. They've got workers. They've got livestock. It's like a little community going on. So Strand immediately goes with Celia, tells her about, Lewis didn't make it. They go to find Thomas. Then a couple of the staff members welcome the rest of them in.
Take their weapons.
Yeah, they take their weapons, which is interesting.
Daniel's not happy.
Daniel kind of pushes back, but he eventually caves and gives his stuff.
Yep.
And everybody else gives their weapons. So come to find out, then we jump to a scene where Strand has come upon Thomas. Thomas is bit, and
Kind of assumed,
it
I
was,
think.
yeah, you kind of assumed that something bad had happened there.
Yep.
And they have a really nice scene where, Strand is obviously totally devastated, and he
should have gotten there sooner.
He regrets taking so long. He regrets not getting there sooner.
Right.
And it's kind of tender. So then we jump from that scene to Alicia then confronts Chris about hesitating. But you didn't help my mama. And they go back and forth. He kind of asks her not to say anything.
Well,
and
at
then
first he's being real
he's very timid about it. And
I froze. That's all it was.
Yeah.
You have to believe me.
And she's not having any of it. And she keeps saying, that she's... And he keeps asking, don't say anything, don't say anything. And then finally he threatens her.
Yeah.
Basically, I don't want to hurt
I don't
anybody.
want to hurt anybody.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Then we get a really nice little scene in the kitchen where Nick sort of comes upon Celia, and they bond a little bit. She gives him some food. You can tell that she warmed to him really quickly. They sort of got a bond right off the bat.
Well, in that moment too, when you're having a really awful day, something's really bad, it's eating on you, and that one person notices and says, "Are you okay?" and you just can't help but break down.
Yeah,
that's what I felt. Was between these two.
Exactly.
Nick seemed totally fine. He's trying to speak with her in Spanish, and he's being really sweet, and you have a heavy smile, and he just almost loses it. You can see the pain in him just come right to the surface when she
had to kill
mentions
that little girl. And it weighed on him. Yeah. And so Maddie comes in. She tells Nick to, go take a shower.
You stink.
You stinkies. And then Maddie and Celia have an interesting little scene where Celia is trying to say that he's really nice
he's
and
special.
He's special, and Maddie's like, but he's fragile.
He's impressionable. I love that.
He's impressionable, and then she says he's fragile.
Yep.
But she does it she's not smiling and oh, I'm telling a story. She's very it was almost like
leave
a
my
warning.
baby alone.
Yeah, exactly. So that was interesting. Then we jump to a scene with Daniel. Daniel's completely out of sorts ever since that flashback that he had.
Yep.
And he has a moment where he's with Celia and she's praying at an altar, and then later when they're going to have dinner, Ophelia comes in and she asks if he's going to come, and it's the very first time he's really sort of talked about his wife, Ophelia's mom, and she was a great cook too, and he's just kind of listless. It's very unlike him. He's very like someone knocked the wind out of him kind of thing is how
dazed.
I sort of see it. So Ophelia's takeaway from that is that now she needs to pray.
She needs to go talk to her mom.
She ends up going to the same altar that Celia was at, and
earlier,
she prays to her mom. She happens to bring Nick along and has him tag along. And that was a nice little scene there. Mm-hmm. Then we jump to a confrontation scene. Maddie's confronting Travis about Chris, about his...
well, she had gone to talk to Alicia, and obviously Alicia...
Oh, yeah.
Because she says, "What are you afraid of now?" And Alicia must have told her of
Chris.
Spilled.
Yeah, and then we flash
straight
to Maddie bursts right in and confronts Travis, says that, Chris did this, and... they argue back and forth. Travis makes some really, he's got some points, which we'll get to. We'll discuss their relationship in a little bit. We've got some tidbits about them, but they both agree that, Maddie says, the best thing for her she needs to be with Alicia. Travis kind of, agrees that would work best. And he agrees that he should go and spend time with Chris and be with him so that he's not alone.
Right.
So from that scene, then we jump to Strand is with Thomas. They're having a really sweet discussion about, about how Strand really just wants Thomas to be able to go to sleep
and leave the world.
Leave the world behind.
The world was never good
worry.
enough for him anyways.
Exactly, yeah. And he's really trying to get him to just, relax and let go.
Yeah.
And Thomas just says, I don't want to without you. Strand says, well, what if I go with you? Thomas
very Shakespearean.
Yeah, it is very Shakespearean. Thomas doesn't want him to. And then eventually they sort of agree that
Celia will take care of
will
them.
take care of them.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, take care of them? How?
Mm-hmm.
Boom, boom. No. Different. So then Daniel is randomly sort of out walking in this out of sorts state. And while he's walking around, he sees some interesting behavior from this little kid. It looks like he took like a live dog and like threw it down a chute into a building, and it's just like do and walks away.
Yeah.
And Daniel's like, I gotta go figure out what the hell that is.
He even says in Spanish, I think, like, what the hell?
Yeah, what the hell? So it takes a little bit for him to sort of, he follows this kid, and he goes in and he confronts this kid, and because he comes up upon this kid
He's talking.
who's talking, and
at
there's
first I thought
nobody
Daniel was
there.
hearing voices.
Yeah,
again.
no shit. And then Daniel's like, who are you talking to? And the kid's like, my mom. And as soon as he says my mom, you're like, oh no. So Daniel goes in and he like pulls, like, it was like a door or a curtain or something, pulls it open, and there's a cell filled with walkers.
Yay.
And then it becomes clear that Celia is the second coming of Herschel, except she doesn't have a barn, she has a wine cellar.
Yeah.
So Daniel leaves, he goes and he confronts Celia about this, and she acts like it's no big deal.
Cool.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool.
It's no big deal.
It's these are people that are loved ones, that are
family.
Should sort of like a similar but different outlook than Herschel.
Mm-hmm.
She was very like,
Herschel thought that there would be a cure.
Yeah.
And she's just saying this is what happens to them after.
And they want to stay, and their family members want them close.
And people are
blah, blah, blah.
hunting them. She did mention that they're being hunted, so I couldn't refuse them shelter.
Yeah, and then in that same conversation, she's in the midst of preparing, like, she's got like a pitcher of water, or it looks like water, and she's got this plate and whatever, and then you see that there's communion wafers there, and then she lets slip that she took care of the church people, and then it becomes clear
And Daniel's quick.
Yeah,
he puts that together real fast.
He's a quick little puppy there.
Yeah.
And it's pretty clear that she's the one who killed the church people, and that's why their eyes were bleeding out, etc.
They were poisoned.
Yeah. So Celia then takes those poisoned wafers, new and improved, the new poison wafers. She's got on a little plate. She brings those into Strand and Thomas. She has this little scene where she tells Strand that, she never really liked him. I love how he just like takes a deep breath and goes, I'm aware. And it's just the best answer. And but it's weird how, like, now that he's decided to like kill himself,
that she's strong of him.
She's okay with him. She's like, oh, you're going to die? Oh, I like you now. Right.
It's the best thing you could have done.
Best thing you could have done. So she's sort of praising his choice to go along with Thomas, etc. Celia leaves. Then we jump to Chris is with Travis. They're asleep in the same room, but Chris wakes up, gets out of bed, and he sneaks out of there. And you're like, oh, this can't be good. And then he goes into Alicia's room, and you're like, oh, this can't be good. And
he's like, Alicia?
Yeah, he says Alicia's name out loud. She doesn't answer. Then he realizes that Maddie's in there with her. He goes around to the other side of the bed, Maddie's side of the bed, and Maddie's knife is there.
Yep.
And he picks up the knife and he's holding it. And right when he's
looking at it.
Yeah, and right when he does, at the same time in Thomas's bedroom, he has died. Strand has gotten up from the bed and walked past the communion wafers, which means I ain't killing myself. And he goes over to a dresser, fumbles around, and then it comes to find out it was a gun. So Chris is there holding that knife. The gun goes off. Maddie and Alicia wake up and they're like, what are you doing?
Get out of my room.
Get out of my room. And I love how like their reaction was, get out of my room, not, oh my God,
what
he's got
the fuck
a fucking
is wrong
knife.
with you?
Right. Her reaction was, get out of my room. Like, oh, I don't have clothes on. Get out of my room. Yeah, but anyway.
That wouldn't have been my reaction.
No, I would have been like, give me that knife, motherfucker.
Yeah.
So they wake up, they tell him to get out. Chris kind of stumbles out. And the final scene of the episode is they show, that's when it's revealed. I mean, you assume when you hear the gunshot, it's revealed that Strand has shot Thomas, and they show he put a pillow over his head though, which was very, I mean, obviously it didn't muffle the sound, but he was obviously feeling some regret over that. So
just don't think he could look him in the face while he did it.
I can't look you in the eye while I shoot you in the eye. So yeah.
So that's our quick scene breakdown. What we're going to do now is what we like to call a scene spotlight. We're just kind of going to pick some of those scenes and just drill into them a little bit more. So the first one that I wanted to start talking about is that very first scene in the church. Not so much, I mean, yeah, what the priest was saying was very interesting. You know, this is not my God who did this. It's evil. And I didn't expect them like, yeah, he's having this, you know, he has this great speech. They're all taking communion, and then they walk out of the church, and there they are picking up guns. And I'm like, wait, the fuck's going on?
Yeah, I was not expecting. Really I was totally expecting this to be like this past, like, you know, almost like on Walking Dead when you can tell like during that the big fight that they had where all the walkers were inside Alexandria, and then they showed Father Gabriel in the little church, and all the people are like praying. I'm like, you can pray all you want, but you're not gonna be able to pray the zombie away. Yeah. But it felt like that's what they were doing. Like that's what the tenor of it was. So it was just such an interesting mixture to like, he's like, now go. He probably even said like, go with God. And they like walk out the door and they're like, okay, I'm going with God to grab my rake and go stab people in the face.
So yeah,
like, it was really interesting.
They start picking up weapons and
excuse me.
Then you know, pulls Thomas Abigail. Yeah. And you know, begging the priest to not do what he's about to do. Yeah. So, you know, at this moment, I'm pretty lost. I have no idea. You know, I thought that they were just gearing up to go kill walkers. Yeah. But the way that Thomas was talking is that they were going to go and actually kill someone. So I'm real confused at this moment. Yeah. And the next thing you know, the first lady like starts having the blood come out of her eyes, and it's just like one by one they're dropping. And then I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Well, the last time we saw blood coming out of people's eyes was back when they were at the prison and they all got that weird flu. Yeah. Right? And I'm like, but the flu like took so much longer, you know, and that happened because they literally their like lungs filled up and it just out of them. Yeah.
That was the best radio response again. It just out of them. Awesome.
So yeah, really, really confused, and you know, Abigail's there, and that's the moment that they all started bleeding like that and dying. I knew Thomas was going to get bit. I just knew it.
Oh, God, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, and it makes you wonder, too, like, how long ago was this scene? Yeah. How long ago did it take place? So how long has Thomas been sitting at home bed? Yeah. Is it just a day or two? You know, because, that is one thing that they've never remained consistent with on either The Walking Dead or Fear the Walking Dead is
time.
How fast.
Yeah. Well, how fast or how slow.
Yeah.
Oh, how fast a bite will
it would turn you. Yeah. Or how fast anybody turns once they die. And I know that it probably depends on, you know, if they're bit or if they die of other causes. Yeah. You know, did they bleed out totally? So I'm sure all that kind of, because the virus is inside them. Once they die, no matter how you die, you come back. Right. And it seems the bite just speeds that along. Right. But they've never, like, when Andrea's sister died in the first season, she didn't turn, like, she died in the evening. Yeah. At night.
And Andrea just, like, was with her for hours.
For hours.
Yeah.
It wasn't until the sun had come back up did she finally turn. Yeah. And no one has, you know, and now in The Walking Dead, they don't even let that happen anymore. They stick them through the head before they even have the opportunity to.
And it's interesting, like, whenever I see someone who's got the bite and, you know, they're going to sort of linger for a while, I always think of, what's his name, Jim in the first season, the one who was bit and they end up leaving him by the side of the road.
Yeah, and the same thing happens with Jim in the comics, too. Yeah. So Jim, probably one of the longest survivors of a bite we have seen, probably between the comic and the show.
I mean, because he survived a couple of days at least. Because first they tied him up and then they were leaving and they were on the, you know.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to know, like, how long did he sort of suffer or lay there. It's funny because when the group from the yacht, when our group came ashore and they found the scene at the church, I honestly, when Strand went running over and he was like, Thomas, because he saw the truck and ran over there. That was one of the first things. I thought he was going to find him right then and there. I thought he was going to be dead. Yeah. He was going to be right there. Yeah. And it was going to be like, I thought like that was going to be the moment. Yeah. I didn't think, because I couldn't remember from the scenes from the week previous of what was going to happen. I couldn't remember if they made it to Rosarita, so all I remembered was like scenes of them on the land.
I think that all they showed us was them on the yacht and Border Patrol and everything.
So they stuck with that. So like in my brain I was like, this could be it. This could be like Strand like has his moment. Right. His man is gone and it's like, okay, you guys, screw you. You can go. Right. Like, I don't need you anymore. Right. Because so it was, I mean, obviously it switched right off the bat, but it was like my first initial thought was like, oh, this is it. This is how they all sort of separate and whatever, but it didn't end up being that.
So yeah, after that opening scene, it goes through the whole Border Patrol stuff, and then they're on shore again and they come across the church. Yeah. Same church, obviously. There's some dead piled up out there, pretty empty. Strand notices Thomas's truck. He runs to the truck. He's not there. He runs into the church. He's not there. And then you hear the dead come in. And, Chris is actually the first one to step up and throw everyone's weapons. He grabs all the weapons.
Yeah. I couldn't remember who it was.
Yeah, it was Chris. So they all start fighting. They're all doing a really good job. I was actually really impressed with Ophelia. And she was just like,
yeah, she was kicking some ass. Yeah.
And then, we have a moment where, like you mentioned just a little bit ago, Nick freezes for a second. Yeah. Because little zombie girl.
Yeah, pauses.
And it's not, he doesn't freeze as in a total shock. It's more of a freeze of do I really have to do this?
Right. I can't believe I have to do this. This is.
Yeah.
I didn't sign up for this.
Exactly. So he takes his axe, I think he had, and he lays the little girl out.
He did what he had to do, but I didn't enjoy it.
We have a moment with Daniel. He's getting attacked by a little kid, and he kind of grabs him by the throat, chest area, and we have a flashback of what looks to be older gentleman's hand with his hand around a little boy's neck. And you can't tell who's who. You don't know if it's Daniel who is like kind of holding this kid by the neck, or is Daniel the little kid being held by the neck. And that would make a lot of sense.
It's not clear. I mean, it felt like with the way that the light was, although, they were trying to convey like jungle and, South America and all that stuff. It felt like with whatever filter or whatever they used in terms of age, it felt like they were trying to make it old enough where it certainly could be Daniel in there. Yeah. So it's really, jury's out. I mean, they made a comment on
Talking Dead. We would see. They said that would come to light next episode, so we'll know what was going on there. Yeah. So I mean, either way would make a lot of sense. Whether it was Daniel was the little boy, or Daniel was about to kill a little boy, knowing how fucked up of a past Daniel has, either side would make complete sense.
Absolutely. I would could totally see that being a reaction if you were either of those people. Yeah. It totally makes sense. Yeah.
So everyone's fighting. Maddie kind of gets her weapon stuck in the torso of this walker, and he comes down on her. And Chris runs up like he's going to help and then stops, like consciously stops and just watches. Yeah. And Maddie's struggling and screaming, and the screaming catches Alicia's attention. So Alicia looks over and sees her mother under this walker, and Chris completely capable, but just standing there.
Yeah, and just a scotch of a tiny backstory. A lot of that is based off of, there was a tiny scene on the boat before they came to shore, before the Border Patrol even came up on them. It was very early in the scene, in the episode. Yep. It's just a quick scene where Travis talks to Chris about, hey, that guy you killed, and when he killed Reed in the last episode, that guy you killed,
you said that he was
going to turn, but
people telling me.
And Chris immediately said, who said that? Who said that? And he immediately thinks Maddie said it.
Yeah. And Travis didn't even mention her. Yeah. He just he went
never
right
did.
there.
Yeah, and Chris just immediately felt it was a betrayal.
Yeah.
You could see it in his face. He felt like she said that she believed me,
Yep.
and she did. When she was comforting him, she's like, I know,
Mhm.
you did what you had to do. It's okay. And she said things like, it's okay. It's okay.
Right.
So he probably felt like he was justified in doing
Right.
what he did. So getting that information, he sort of held on to it. And then as soon as he saw that Maddie
Yep.
was in this position of danger, he's like,
And
oh,
now
yeah, that's right.
we did not see them telling Travis about Chris shooting Reed.
So we don't know who it was.
We don't know who
it could have
told
been
him.
a
It could have
couple
been the
people.
entire crew.
Yeah, it could have been all of them could have said something.
Right.
But Chris centered on Maddie.
He's
whether it was or was not Maddie, we
Right.
don't know.
So obviously very pissed at Maddie, decides to just watch her struggle underneath this walker. Would he have let her get bit? Would he, if Alicia didn't see this, would he have finally have stepped in? We don't know, but
It's hard to say.
Alicia notices and comes to her mother's rescue, puts the walker down.
And she's pissed. She's like, Chris.
Oh, yeah,
she's
she's
yelling. So she's very vocal about it.
Yeah. And Daniel sat there struggling with that kid, so Ophelia had to come up.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I find it interesting as two children coming to the rescue of their parents.
Yeah.
While Daniel's been pushing for the kids to be more active and not be so coddled.
And here they were being nice and active.
Right, and Maddie's all, no, they're just kids,
Yeah.
And in that scene, two of the children came to the rescue of their parents.
Yep.
I found it very interesting.
That was very cool.
Mm-hmm. And then they end up loading up in Thomas's truck, and Strand drives us to the ranch.
Rosarita Ranch.
Yeah. We're gonna not dwell on much, but we are gonna skip to part where Maddie brings food in for Thomas and Strand. So after they get there, Strand's not leaving Thomas's room.
Yeah.
He wants to be with Thomas in his last hours, and so Maddie thinks, well, I'll bring him some food.
Bring some food to them, yeah.
And I really liked this scene for a couple of reasons. I really liked how she knocks and says it's Maddie, and Thomas goes, do we like her? And Strand goes, she's fierce.
Way to gay it up, boys.
Well, and not only that, but it shows that there has been a bond growing between Maddie and Strand.
There's a respect there.
Yes.
There's definitely a respect. And you could sort of sense that it was coming. He's had a couple of, in the last episode or two, he's had a couple of little you got this, you know what you're doing kind of things. And in that moment, as soon as he's like, she's fierce. I was like, whether he's saying that in a positive or a negative way, it means that he's connected with her.
Yeah.
That's great.
And she is. She's very fierce.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. She's very mama bear.
Mm-hmm. And so she brings the food in, and Thomas apologizes. Under normal circumstances, I wouldn't have stayed cooped up in my room.
Yeah, I'd be a better host. Yeah.
And
I'm so sorry I'm dying.
She apologizes and says in better circumstances she wouldn't be such an intrusive guest. And
Yep.
Strand says, who are you kidding, Maddie? We both know that's not true.
Yeah, so there's a lot of really playful Maddie Strand moments, which are great.
Which is why I really liked it. And then before she leaves, Thomas wants her to promise that she will look after Strand once he's gone.
Yeah.
And I love her response of, he won't make it easy. And he says, that's why I'm asking you. And she just kind of nods and leaves the room.
Yeah. That was a really great moment for Maddie herself, but also her sort of quasi relationship with Strand.
Yeah.
It was just a really great, I love how, here's this most intimate of moments. Here's this person who means the world to him. It's obviously, this is his lover. And they had this shared moment when she's like, he won't make it easy. And Thomas didn't be like, oh no, Victor is such a sweetheart. What are you talking about? No. He's like, yeah, I understand.
That's
He's
why
a pain
I'm
in the
asking
ass.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was.
And two, no one really has gotten much information from Strand on who he is. And her walking into that room and seeing that moment of them just curled up on the bed together and seeing the love Strand has for Thomas told her so much.
It's very vulnerable, too.
Yes.
It was almost like, to me, it's like the cat giving you its belly.
Yeah.
You know, here I am. And it was, you know, if this were a couple of weeks ago or whatever, would Strand have immediately sat up and been all like businesslike and whatever?
Right.
But he was like, "Fuck it, my guy's dying. This is the thing that's most important to me. I don't care about
how I come off.
I
don't care about anything else. I care about this man right here."
Yeah, because he's been the steely, brave-faced guy on the yacht and everything, but it was all torn away in that moment, which is really interesting.
So a couple of other little things happen, especially a conversation between Maddie and Travis, but we're going to talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
And then so we're going to talk a little bit more about, we mentioned it too, about Daniel catching this boy.
Yeah.
He's walking through, he sees this dog go down the chute, and I'm like, motherfuckers, the fuck? Like,
I was writing notes for today, and I swear to God, I paused so that I could sit and think. I was like, it's not a garbage chute. I was trying to think of the word. I couldn't think of because it's like a storm drain or like a gutter. It's like attached to the roof and whatever. And I literally sat there in my, 41-year-old self going, stupid fucking age. Like, what is the word? I couldn't think of the word. And I was no way I was going to move on until I got it. Gutter.
So, he thinks, what the hell? I'm on my couch thinking, what the hell?
Right.
So he's walking down this corridor.
And he did it so matter-of-factly, too. He, you gotta understand, he tosses this puppy in like he's putting, an overdue library book back into the chute. He's like, do-do-do-do-do, shwee!
No remorse, no nothing, just bye puppy, whatever.
Oh.
I know. My heart was like, poor
puppy.
I love puppies.
I know.
He's walking down this corridor and he hears this voice. So, like I said before, I felt like I thought Daniel was hearing voices again.
He's not good.
He's all over the place right now. And I'm like, great. Is he hallucinating? What's going on? And he sees this boy talking to someone. He's saying something about how he's practicing his juggling and he's getting really good at it. And it's just no fun because there's no one to play with here. And so he asks him, who are you talking to? And the kid says, my mommy.
Yeah.
Well, can you introduce me to your mommy? And yeah, you can see him through the gate. Okay. And of course, I'm sure that by this moment, Daniel knew.
Yeah.
He just needed that visual confirmation.
It was like, let me I'm going to do my remedial math here. Okay, if you take a live puppy and throw it in a chute and add son speaking to mom who's somewhere in a cellar and add, oh no, we were just talking and she's right over there. Yeah, that addition adds up to you're going to come across a room full of zombies.
So he sees this wine cellar full of zombies, 20 zombies in there. And, of course, I'm sure every Walking Dead fan immediately thinks of Herschel.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the similarities between the two. And,
I mean, how could you not?
And then Daniel goes straight to Celia to confront her.
Yeah.
And she's just so whatever about
Yeah,
it.
Exactly.
They're our family. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was really interesting.
But the moment, and the reason I wanted to talk about this was she says something very interesting to Daniel and asks him, why are you afraid of death? And then says that he needs to make peace with his dead.
Yeah.
And then asks him again, what are you so afraid of?
Right.
And Daniel's kind of taken aback by these questions and what she's saying.
Right, because he goes in there expecting to have who do you think you are? This is my house. I think he was expecting a confrontation. But she was just like, whatever, it's dead people. It's in the cellar. Let's talk about you, Daniel. And why are you afraid of the dead? And what are you afraid of with death? And he just was not expecting that
She's really good at honing in on things like that. She was able to pick out that Nick was struggling with something. everything.
Yep.
So now she even knows that Daniel's struggling, and obviously, I'm sure it wasn't too hard to put together. He was a Hispanic man who was hanging out by the altar. So she asks, "Are you praying?" And he says, "No."
Right.
You're here for a reason.
And he's obviously got something weighing on his mind because he didn't come to dinner. And when they bumped into each other at that altar, he apologized for Luis.
Right.
You know, I'm so sorry. I mean, he didn't do anything to Luis, but he was like, I'm so sorry. And she was like, oh, why are you sorry? It's no big deal.
Did you shoot him in the head? And I love Daniel's response. No.
And she's like, well, then that's fine. It'll be okay.
He's so confused.
And you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah, so she's really good at honing in on certain things with people. And so she walks away and Daniel's just kind of left there like, well, shit.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, you know, in this particular episode, the first thing that we think of when someone tells Daniel that he needs to make peace with his dead is, of course, his dead wife. But we know that Daniel has a fucked up past. So we know that there's more than just
that.
Yeah,
it's not just his dead wife.
I'm sure, killed many people.
He has more dead than than meets the eye.
Right.
Exactly.
So, yeah, that is our scene spotlight. What we're going to do next is kind of go through a character analysis. There's a couple of characters that we kind of want to just kind of dig into
Absolutely.
a little bit more.
You know, and a couple of them we've talked about already, and then we're going to talk about some developments with Chris, and we're going to talk about some developments with Daniel. We've discussed both in the past, but we're going to add in Celia because she's a great question mark. We don't know what's going on with her. So first off, Chris. Man, there was I really feel like, I mean, Celia was sort of like the center of the wheel for this week because, you know, Rosarita and everything. Right. Everybody had, if you think about it, everybody had some sort of interesting interaction with her at some point.
Yeah.
But really, when you think about moving the story forward in terms of like characters that are making discoveries themselves and people are discovering things about them, Chris and Daniel, really, this was their episode.
Yeah, there was a lot centered around them.
You know, Chris in specific, we got to ask the question because they're talking about it on Talking Dead, and we got to say, so and we brought this up last week, is he savable? And I don't know.
I don't either.
Yeah.
I feel like all throughout this episode that Chris was almost doing things he didn't want to do or that he honestly felt bad about afterwards, almost like something inside him is telling him to do something,
like it's compelling him.
Yeah. Or maybe he is hearing voices and they haven't shown us that yet. Is he is he breaking so badly he's I don't know.
Yeah, like has he had some kind of psychotic break, which is possible.
Yeah.
You know, and they just haven't shown it because, I mean, we've heard Daniel having him these voices and these moments there.
Right.
But, you know, maybe they just haven't given us that slice of Chris yet. I mean, and really what I think is the saddest is that when it comes to Chris, I think we feel like this pain for him just because you can totally understand why he would be angry and sad and depressed and, you know, losing his mom, but losing her in such a violent and quick way and, you know, just not being able to reconcile she's got to go with, like, she got to go now. Like, it's just...
I think the other thing, other than what the trauma that he has experienced, but the fact that Chris is a sweet boy. Like, he cares about other people. He wants to make a difference. And to see him go from that in season 1 to now this kid who just keeps doing weird things.
Yeah.
You know? So in this episode, we have him immediately jump on Maddie, thinking Maddie's the one who ratted him out.
So, what's the word I'm looking for?
Irrational.
He's irrational. Irrationally jumps right on Maddie.
Yeah. And then
emotionally,
from that, so irritated at that, actually, because if you watch the scene, when Maddie goes down, he rushes to her and then stops.
Yeah.
It's not he's just standing there, just finished killing something, looked over, and Maddie was down. No, his first instinct was to help.
Yeah.
And then he stopped.
And then something changed. Something spoke to him. Something happened. Something internal.
Right.
And we don't know what that is.
Right. So then he comes in to talk to Alicia, like, you know, kind of this mopey self of him. And Alicia immediately, like, I saw what you did. And at first I don't understand what you're talking about. And you almost believe him for a minute. Like he really doesn't
Right.
know
Did he
what he did
disassociate from that
wrong.
moment? Yeah.
Right. And then she, you know, I saw you. You didn't help my mom. You just watched. You could have helped and you didn't. And his reaction to that is complete defense right away. Those walls go right back up.
Yeah.
And he's so blown away that Alicia would even judge him or accuse him
Yeah.
of doing something
Yeah.
like that. And then his tune changes and says, well, please don't tell anybody. You know,
Yeah.
first it's, I didn't do that. I
didn't
don't
do
know what you're
anything.
talking about. I can't
And
believe
not
you
only
would say
did I
that.
not do it, don't say anything.
And then it's, don't say anything to anybody. It would tear this family apart.
Yeah.
And I love Alicia. She's pushing that boundary. Well, what's going to happen if I do, you know? And the way he said, I don't want to hurt anybody was like painful. Like you could see, I know it's a side profile shot, but he's almost crying
Yeah.
when he tells her, I don't want to hurt anybody. And it's like he feels he would need to if they found out. It's like he knows he's unraveling and he's trying so hard to not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he feels that he will do something wrong if he's pinned into some sort of corner.
Yeah.
So what's happening with him is very interesting and it's really scary. And I want so badly for him to be okay because he is that sweet boy.
Yeah.
You know.
And you can understand, like, we've all gone through grief, and a majority of what he's going through is grief.
Right.
And, you know, there's, unfortunately, in regular life, we deal with grief and then, like, small, tiny things that sort of interrupt it or make it worse or whatever, you know. And in his instance, he's dealing with grief, and then it's like death is literally all around you.
All
and
around
you can't
you.
help but relive it over and over and over again. Every time you put a walker down, it'd be like, oh, this is exactly what happened when my mom died.
Right.
And it's like, so the added stress of all of that, it just, like, you totally understand where he's coming from. I don't think he's justified in, like, trying to scare Alicia, but it's like,
no.
Oh, man.
And the way he grabbed her, like, I definitely see why Alicia was frightened, why she felt threatened.
Oh, God, yeah.
Because, no, he didn't say, I will kill you. He grabbed her and said, I don't want to hurt anybody.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a threat.
He may have said something ambiguous, but it wasn't ambiguous on who he intended it for.
Right.
It was pretty clear what he was trying to do and say.
So then Maddie goes and spends the night in Alicia's room because Alicia obviously tells her.
Mm-hmm.
And Chris gets up, opens the door to Alicia's room, says her name. Alicia doesn't wake up. You know, so you're thinking, did he go to Alicia's room to apologize?
Was my first thought, yeah.
You know, and then he walks in the dark, real quiet, and picks up that knife. And he doesn't have this menacing look on his face. He doesn't look pissed or angry or anything like that. He just picks up the knife real casually.
Yeah.
And just looks at it.
Yeah.
And I was reading online, some people are thinking that maybe he didn't expect Maddie to be there. He did, you know, he was genuinely going to go and apologize to Alicia for how he freaked out and apologize maybe for not helping her mother.
Yeah.
And then he sees this knife and he's like, well, what if they did something to me? But I don't see it.
Yeah.
I don't see him going into that room and grabbing that knife for any other reason than to do something with it.
Yeah.
Because someone said, I read something online of what if he was just going to hide it and then wake them up to talk to them. But
yeah, but then he would have hidden it. You know, it's not like, I mean, he's held a knife and he's held a sharp object since the apocalypse has begun. It's not like he picked it up to go, ooh, I hardly ever get a chance to hold a knife. Let me revel in this for a half second before I stick it in my, you know, my waistband to put it away or whatever. Yeah. No, he picked it up with intention. Yeah. You know, which is sad, but, you know, it is what it is. People change. People become different people, you know? So, oh, God, poor Chris. So, to be continued.
Yes,
we will see how that rolls up. I'm I'm really interested to see, especially since you're creating all of these immediate wedge issues,
Mm,
you're immediately, and we'll get into this later, but you're immediately going to pit Maddie and Travis against each other. You're immediately
immediately,
going to
yeah.
pit Alicia against you, which I'm not sure yet, but it may pull Nick to her side. We don't know yet where that'll fall, but just and Daniel also felt this kind of affinity with Chris and felt bad for him. He knew he was working through some shit, like when he was guarding Reed. So it's like it's creating this wedge that even if like nothing physical happens, like if he does anything or hurts anyone or whatever, there's gonna always be this weird wedge, always gonna be there. It's very bizarre.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on. I figured we could talk about Daniel next, and then we'll round it all out with our new lady. But Daniel had a really strong episode for, Julie was talking earlier about he had this scene, this moment. It all started with this moment when they're fighting the parishioners at the church, where he's holding back this boy's neck that's attacking him, and he just immediately slips into this flashback. And again, we can't confirm which one he was. Was he in the flashback holding the boy, or was he the boy being held? Either way, it's compelling. Or
was it something he witnessed?
Yeah,
like,
that's true. He could have been a third party and just saw it.
But it was. He's obviously been going through some stuff. He had the voice come to him last episode.
Yes.
Take the gun, Daniel. Take the gun.
Yeah.
And now this. So he's fighting his past demons a little bit in the last couple of episodes.
It's definitely coming to a head. For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And he has a couple of other really interesting moments at the altar with Celia when he apologizes for Luis. Not so much apologizes, but he tells his regret. He says he's sorry, and he's sort of broken up about that. She makes her comments about, oh, you didn't shoot him in the head. He'll be fine. He'll make his way back, was what she said.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't know what the hell that means.
Yeah.
Until a little later, so he's trying to work through like, well, that's a really fucked up response to my son is dead.
I think one of the not most interesting, but what really set the mood, I think, for Daniel for this entire episode was when he went to put Luis out and the kids stopped him.
Yep.
Luis gave him the owl coin and he flipped it right over.
Yeah, it didn't mean anything
overboard.
to him.
Did it?
Right, exactly.
With him coming from the Spanish kind of background, and Luis also, does he understand what this owl coin meant?
Yeah.
And I did some research on it, and the owl coin, the owl in general, I guess, in the Hispanic culture is, death is near or imminent, very, very surrounded with death.
Yeah, they called it Santa Muerte, which would be the saint of death.
Yeah. So, and I'm sure Daniel knows what that is.
Yeah, that seems like it'd be something pretty,
And he wants nothing
universal.
to do with it.
Yeah.
Get that away from me.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not bringing this anywhere.
Yeah.
So that's the way I kind
the
of
coin
looked
of
at
death.
it.
I will not carry this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, but that scene right there set the entire tone of Daniel.
Yeah.
For the rest of the episode.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's all death with him this whole episode, whether it's, that coin, making the decision over Luis, then, when he froze and had that flashback and couldn't kill the child, then all the way to, this shared moment with Celia at the altar. Then later, Ophelia is trying to get him to come to dinner.
Ophelia.
And he is just like, woo, the wind is knocked out of him. He's just like staring off into space. Ophelia's trying to, coax him and saying, oh, Celia's a great cook. And he's like, your mom was a great cook. And da-da. So he is really thinking about.
He keeps staring off into space.
Yeah.
He made eye contact with Ophelia like twice, I think. And there's even a point where Ophelia even looks over at what he's looking at.
Yeah, like what's so
Intriguing
nothing there.
right now.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the camera never panned to show if is it just a blank wall? Is he staring out the window?
Yeah.
What is he looking at? But he's just kind of dazed.
Yeah, it's kind of staring off into space, and then he, finally, goes for a walk or whatever. Maybe try to clear his head. We don't know. And
maybe he went to pray at the altar.
Yeah.
Well, no, probably not, because Ophelia was praying at the altar.
So he goes for this walk, and that's when he comes upon the kid and the cellar full of the dead, and it comes back and confronts Celia about it. And so every moment that Daniel had in this episode was all so, I mean, they deal with death all the time, but it was more personal. It was
personal death.
And you could even feel with each thing, this truth of who Daniel is and what he's experienced. You can feel it sort of chipping away. Every little thing that happened chipped away, and he's just going to be laid bare. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out in the next episode, as we've been sort of promised that there would be some resolution to that. So, I mean, he's such an intriguing character.
Very intriguing.
Yeah.
I'm very interested to see where his backstory is, because obviously we know it's really messed up.
Yeah.
But we don't know what happened.
Exactly.
We have a little bits and pieces of what he has shared with either his daughter or with the people around him, but that's all we have gotten.
Yeah, they're just like little tiny.
Yeah,
they're
it's
like
not
almost
much.
nothings. They're like little tiny nothings, and we're only able to piece it all together because we see a tiny nothing he shares with, say, Nick and Chris and Ophelia, and we can, as observers, take all of those and smush them together and go, oh my God, he's had some shit.
And his skill set too, right?
Exactly.
He can torture people. He can club an eel.
Yeah, exactly.
He has all these really weird skill sets.
I know. It's gotta mean something.
Yeah.
Oh man. So again, to be continued for next week. I'm very curious to see how that plays out, as well as our new lady, Celia, Luis's mom. She really feels like Julie and I were talking about this a little bit earlier when we were talking about her status in that Abigail household. There's some confusing moments where Celia calls Thomas Mijo,
Yes.
which is son. And there's a clip for the scene for next week, which we'll get to in a little bit, but she clearly refers to Thomas as her son. And the thing is that she's obviously not his mom.
Right.
But we were sort of, spitballing about, does this mean, is this the classic tale of the, affluent parents who are never around? And so Thomas was raised by, his housekeeper, his maid, his nanny, and, did he then have this closeness with Luis because of, that's her son,
right?
But they were, let's say, similar in age. So, I kind of lean a little bit more on that.
Well, because it's very confusing, because when we first walk into this episode and we first meet Celia, she is very she owns it.
She's like in charge.
Yeah.
And even I made the point too that makes a distinction. There's a big distinction between her and the workers. She's wearing regular clothes, these bright, fun colors, and these two women who introduced themselves and was like, oh, we need your guns, whatever. They were clearly in uniforms of some kind, whether it was some kind of nanny or nurse or something.
Right. So not only is she in normal clothes, but you can find her in the kitchen just kind of cooking. She's got this very in charge demeanor about her. So that makes it seem like this is her beautiful ranch and Thomas is a guest. But as you look more into it and as you think of other things, especially the flashbacks that we got to see a couple episodes ago, you're pretty sure it's Thomas's ranch.
Oh, God, yeah.
And that the Abigail name is the big name. So then, because it was such a big name, did he grow up with all these different housekeepers and workers and a nanny and stuff like that and just became so close?
Yeah.
Because you know that it's common for the very rich to hire these nannies for their children and to never be around. So later on, the children become so much
Yeah.
closer to the
More
nanny
attached to
and more
the nanny.
attached.
Yeah.
And they find them as more of a mother figure than their actual mother. Or maybe Thomas's mother wasn't around and it was just his dad who was always away on business. So he grew fond of the nanny.
Right.
And of course, then Luis, because it was obviously Celia's son. So we're trying to figure out the status.
Yeah, so I'm curious to see how that plays out. There is we'll get into that when we talk about scenes for next week, but there's a little scene that sort of adds another layer to that, which we'll be able to chat about later.
Right.
We did get to talk a little bit about the owl symbology in terms of it being the Santa Muerte, the saint of death, but Julie dug a little bit more and got a couple of extra layers.
I did a little bit more digging, and I mean, it's the internet, and you can't always believe what you read on the internet. But I found this in a couple of different places, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I was finding a lot of mention to the owl in the Hispanic culture and witchcraft.
Interesting.
So there being possibly her being kind of witch-like.
Yeah.
Which would make a lot of sense with how she can really hone in on things. And she's so, how do I explain? Like, she's just so fluid.
You know what she reminded me of? And physically a little too, the way her hair was. She reminds me of the Oracle in The Matrix.
Yeah.
Where she's very like, I'm calm, I'm at home, I'm cooking, I'm in the kitchen, but really I'm totally fucking in charge.
Right.
And I know everything about everything and everything that's going on around.
Right.
I mean, she was a little more fierce than the Oracle was, but I just got that same sense of they're putting forth this like, she's in charge, but she's also human. You know what I mean? But a lot of times when you see like sort of this witch figure, so if that symbology is true, a lot of times that person would be in a seat of power. So she's in this sort of seat of power,
right?
However it may have been given to her, and she has responsibilities, and people look to her for guidance and for strength and leadership and things like that. So it'd be interesting to see how that if that
it was very interesting
symbol really plays out that way,
to see how the owl is represented in different cultures, because the owl also pops up again with kind of witchcraft stuff with the Wicca faith. So I found that very interesting. But in other cultures, it's very wisdom, and it has nothing to do with death. It's a strong symbol. So very interesting.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would definitely call her strong.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, here's this woman who found out that her son was dead, and she immediately was like, my son is dead. I'm going to go in the kitchen. I'm going to make some pozole. Well, and you're like,
and I do find it interesting, too, how she believes that we're going to talk about her and Nick's little relationship here, but when talking to Nick, she mentioned something about how the dead have always been around. Now we can see them.
Right. Yeah.
And that's, I mean, pretty customary in their culture that, with the Day of the Dead and
exactly
and all that kind of stuff. And now it's kind of interesting to think about that, right? When people died before, they just you couldn't see them, but they were always around. And now when they die, they're just here. But to her, they're not dead.
Yeah. Well, she even says that. She's got a whole scene with Nick where she says, Nick actually asks her, because he went to the scenes with Nick and Celia were really actually kind of sweet. He's obviously, she likes him, and you can tell she's sort of warm to him.
Well, and he's kind of going to her like a second mom.
Exactly. But so he goes to her this second time, and then they've got this really great moment where he asks and says, they're not really dead, are they? And she says, no, they're not. And she says, that is what happens after. That's the next phase. So,
but I don't think Nick liked that response.
No.
He was expecting something more for that. And with her just saying that's what happens next, I felt like he was a little disappointed with that response.
It was it is what it is kind of response. But that was very interesting. And so her little relationship with Nick, another one that I feel like there was a lot of scenes like that, not just with Celia and Nick, but just in general. There were a lot of scenes that can sort of set up a wedge issue later. And obviously, Nick looking to Celia as sort of this like, surrogate mom, mom figure, mother figure, Mother Earth figure. And Maddie having this moment of, when she was mad, and he's fragile and, almost like a warning to stay away. Or, she had a mama bear moment. That's another wedge.
Well, that was a good scene too, with Celia saying he's special, and her response was he's impressionable, and she says that the enlightened normally are.
Yeah.
And then she says, well, he's fragile.
Right.
And yeah.
So it was almost like, it was a mixture of a warning to stay away and also like I'm not going to let you hurt him.
Yeah.
He's.
And it's not the first time Maddie has gotten overly protective.
Oh,
over
for
Chris.
sure.
But and then in the second time that he goes to Celia, and Celia says, where's your mother? And he says, well, she's sleeping. And he says, she worries about you. And he says, well, I've given her reason to.
Yeah.
I liked that.
Yeah, because
he recognizes why his mom is so crazy.
Exactly. And it also, it gives Maddie a little more, there's a little more credence to what she said to Celia earlier. If Nick is backing it up, then, she wasn't just like talking out of her ass.
Right.
She wasn't being jealous or envious or,
It validated her.
Exactly. It totally did.
Yeah.
I was like, validated. That's the word I was
looking for.
So not just characters, but we've got a couple of relationships that we kind of want to delve into too.
Just a little touch on them.
Just a little touch on them. So just a quick touch on the Thomas and Strand relationship.
Yeah. More so that I'm sad we didn't get to see more of that.
Yeah.
I'm actually sad that we lost Thomas as quickly as we did. I thought he could have been a really interesting character, even if just for a little while.
Yeah.
Great actor,
Yeah.
Really interesting. They did so much writing into his character, and we don't get to see it. I mean, hopefully we'll see some more flashbacks. We get to see him and Strand in some flashbacks.
Absolutely.
But
here's hoping. I made a note too in regards to their relationship. They sort of had this death pact, if you will, air quotes, death pact, and very Shakespearean. But Strand didn't follow through. So I'm wondering.
He had ever intention.
Exactly. I made that note where I was like, did he break a trust or a pact, or did he simply say that so that, I'll kill myself too turns into, okay, well, I'll relax and then I'll just let go and I'll die.
I think it was a way to calm him down and to let him pass as peacefully as he could.
Exactly.
Because he cares for him.
Yeah.
And, seeing them hunkered down together really helped kind of solidify Strand's feelings.
Yeah.
Because in a couple episodes ago, when we saw pretty much the last time Strand and Thomas saw each other, and Thomas said, I love you, and Strand said, I'll be right back.
Yeah, it was
a very Han Solo of him.
I love you. I know. I'm lovable in general.
So, in that moment, I know a lot of people were questioning, like, does Strand really love Abigail?
Yeah, and I think that, that's the case with a lot of people who are con men, and he really, he obviously saw, like, when he could have been totally screwed if this wasn't a guy who was totally attracted to him. So did he take advantage of that moment, or were they actually in love? Who knows? But at least, even if in my position, even if Strand got into the relationship with Abigail with bad intentions, I would say that those bad intentions went away, because there's a lot of things as a con man that you can do, but he was alone with Thomas and was crying, and we were seeing that. It'd be different if people were sort of streaming in and out and he had the tears on for show, but they were alone together and he was just having these emotional moments by himself.
Yeah.
So which makes me really feel like.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree. I think that it was,
Yeah, that whole scene was very rough for him.
It was, and the scene itself was beautiful. Him saying, well, we can go together, or,
Yeah.
you know, and then not doing that,
Yeah.
putting him down.
Yeah.
That mercy, you know, and obviously they know what Celia's doing, and Strand did not want that to happen.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I that right there showed so much love.
Yeah, it totally did. So jump into the next relationship I really want to talk about is sort of the center of the universe, the Maddie Travis relationship, which has had better days.
Yeah, I'd say.
Yeah. There's definitely, you know, I was talking before about wedge issues, but definitely the Chris stuff is really setting up. You know, Maddie's got her own issues with Nick and feeling he's fragile and whatever, but Chris and Alicia, you know, with Alicia feeling threatened and Chris needing help. But also part of that conflict is Travis feeling that he was there in moments of need for Maddie. He was there for
and that
Nick.
he always believed that Nick could be something and do something and get better. And he doesn't feel like Maddie feels the same way about Chris.
Yeah.
And Maddie is very concerned over her daughter right now. And honestly, because of how pushed away Alicia has kind of always been because of Nick's addiction.
Yeah.
That if we didn't actually see the scenes of Chris threatening her and things like that,
it could have felt like, oh, I'm just doing this for attention. Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't think that's what it is. I think she honestly felt threatened. I would have.
Sure.
Absolutely would have.
Oh, yeah.
And now Maddie's actually stepping up. She's becoming mama bear to her daughter. And she's really hurting Travis. And I keep wanting to call him Cliff.
I know. We had this problem in the beginning.
She's hurting him in the process of that, though, you know, saying my daughter. And he's like, our daughter.
Yeah.
I've been here for years and I love these kids. They're my kids, too.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting that no matter what happens, this, you know, whether if Chris all of a sudden is like, I'm really sorry, and if he's, you know, chastened and whatever, there's still going to be conflict there between Maddie and Travis, which is really sad. I'm not sure how repairable it is,
right?
You know, at this point. So that's sort of the question mark moving forward.
And they are both pretty justified right now. Also, Maddie feels frantic. She feels, you know, what my daughter has brought to me isn't something to be taken lightly.
Right.
And then Travis kind of compares it to the problem that Nick had, which isn't, I don't think, very comparable.
No.
When, yes, of course, Nick was emotionally and mentally hurting his family with his addiction, but he wasn't physically hurting anybody but himself.
Right. And there was never any he didn't intend to harm. It was sort of a byproduct of him being addicted was this other unfortunate, you know, sort of fallout from it. But this other element with Alicia has this physical threatened element, which wasn't there before, which is it's kind of like comparing apples and oranges at this point.
Because, yes, in a way they are both sick, right?
Right.
You know, Nick had an addiction, and now Chris is having some sort of psychological break. So, yes, they were both sick. They both need help. But the comparison that Travis was making, I felt was a little thin. Yeah.
So I'm sure that'll come up later.
So yeah, I feel they're both justified. I feel that they both hurt each other in that instance. And now we're going to see the aftermath. What's going to happen, especially with them waking up and Chris being in the room.
That's going to have to be an issue. It'll be dealt with, and it's going to create some conflict, some confusion.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
People are going to go to their corners, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So then our last little relationship we wanted to touch on really briefly is just a really, really quick, just this kind of tiny little friendship / relationship that's sort of blossoming with Ophelia and Nick.
Yeah.
And they were talking on the Talking Dead about, you know, shipping them, and
yeah,
I'm not sure we're there yet, but I think the two of them,
I think it's an interesting relationship.
Yeah.
Where it goes, I'm not sure, and I don't know at this moment if I have a preference. But very interesting. They just kind of click with each other.
Yeah.
They're kind of on the same page. They kind of have the same views and feelings on some things, and they've kind of been there for each other a little bit.
I think there's also like the two of them, I think, feel a little solitary. And together they're sort of, we can
lean on each other.
We can lean on a little bit. Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of going to be kind of interesting. I'm sure we're going to be talking about them again. In what kind of way, we don't know. Friends, more, who knows?
We'll see.
I know. So that's what we've got for this week, folks. Before we wrap it up, we want to throw out a big thank you again. Woohoo, Alabama, you are still in the lead with being our biggest subscribers, our biggest downloaders, our biggest fans so far. So woohoo to Alabama. However, hot on your heels, Texas is coming. It's coming for you, Alabama, so you look out.
Texas is only a couple downloads behind Alabama.
So what we're saying is, Texas, it looks like you've got a job to do.
And I just want to say, hey, Illinois people.
Yeah.
We
get
live
it together. We live
Illinois.
here.
What the hell?
I know. Yeah, get it together, would you?
They are number 3, though.
I know, but still. Come on, Illinois. You're shaming us. You're shaming us.
But that's our episode, guys. Thanks so much for listening. As always, please find us on Facebook. Search for Aim for the Head Podcast. And from there, you can find our Twitter, our Instagram, and our YouTube. Also, email us anytime at aimfortheheadpodcast@gmail.com. And we look forward to talking to you guys next week.
Yeah, and just a quick programming note, too, to let you know, we are aware that the mid-season finale for Fear is next week, but we have other topics that we want to bring you, so we certainly plan after that mid-season finale to be talking about other things.
Yes.
We still need to talk about the last season of Walking Dead.
Yep.
Julie and I have some shared loves of Better Call Saul, which just had a fantastic season. Julie might do a day talking about comic books, talk a little Deadpool, maybe a little Captain America if we ever make it to the movie theater, and maybe give me a little free reign to discuss a little Game of Thrones with you folks.
And then we were thinking, I'm currently watching The Night Manager, so I was thinking of maybe us talking about that. Our producer, we've also got him
hooked
watching the Night Manager, so maybe the 3 of us will do a Night Manager episode just to do it.
Thumbs up from Rich.
Or if you want our take on anything, if you want to know what we thought about something, let us know before next episode, and maybe we can get into this next couple of weeks when they're on mid-season break.
Absolutely.
But as always, I am Julie.
And I'm Diana.
Thanks for listening.